It's that time once again. I'm headed out to the San Fernando Valley to take a stroll down memory lane. But before I do, I want to take a second to thank some of my newest Patreon supporters. Quiz Kid Donnie Smith, Dan Cooper, and Matthew Chance. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. I really appreciate it. If you want to support me on Patreon, go to patreon.com/80slife. Now let's go see what we can find. This used to be the Keebler Factory, and if I remember correctly, it was a brick building with some small windows near the top. They were either like glass brick windows or frosted windows, because I remember always passing by and getting really excited seeing that it was the Keebler building, and I would ask my parents, why can't we see through the windows? And they would always tell me it's because they don't want you to see the elves. And I believed them. I completely believed that the elves were in there. I remember picturing the elf tree being inside this building,
where we make crackers and cookies.
So that reminds me that I gotta be careful what I say to my child, because kids will believe pretty much anything. Now, I'm assuming that when we lived in North Hollywood and we would visit my grandmother in Reseda, we would travel across Roscoe, because I remember always passing by the Keebler building and always passing by the Budweiser brewery, which is right there, and always commenting how good it smelled, and my parents thinking there was something wrong with me. This is the 6th house that I ever lived in, and the last house that I ever lived in with both my parents. This is the house that I lived in when my father passed away. So although I have a lot of bad memories with this house, this is also the house that I lived in when I met my wife. So I have a lot of good memories with this house too. This is the house I lived in that she would come to every day after she got out of class, and then we would stay up all night eating Del Taco and ice cream sandwiches and watching movies. So I have a lot of really good memories with this house as well. This is Bertrand Elementary School, and I don't remember why, but in one of my earlier Valley videos, somebody mentioned this school in the comments, and right down this street, about 5 houses, that's the house that I lived in that I just showed you. So I lived just down the street from Bertrand Elementary School. And then if you go that way and make a right about a quarter mile, you'll find Lindley and Sherman Way, which I've shown you in a few different videos. That's where they filmed a lot of boogie nights and just a lot of different things on Sherman Way. Now, when we lived over here, there was a restaurant diner place right around the corner that my parents liked to go to all the time. I'm gonna show it to you right now. And this is the restaurant, Zig's, Home of the Bullet, or at least it used to say Home of the Bullet on the sign up there. That was their signature sandwich. And if I remember correctly, it was basically just a cheeseburger on a long oval bun. I wasn't really a fan of it, but what I was a fan of was the chili cheese fries. Now these things were massive. They came in a styrofoam to-go container, and not the little one, I'm talking about the large container. And it was packed with fries, covered in chili and cheese, and then about a pound of grilled onions. Now they were massive and definitely enough food for 2 people to share, but I would also get myself a chili cheeseburger, which was also pretty huge, and usually a chocolate shake. Yes, it's a miracle that I'm alive to tell you about this today. Now, like I said, my parents came here all the time, probably once a week for a while. I was a pretty big fan of the place, but I got kind of sick of it because my parents came here so much. Now, I haven't been here in a really long time, but I can say the food was really great back then. It's definitely worth giving it a try if you haven't been here. And literally right around the corner from Zig's is Adrian's. Now, when I used to come here, I remember this being strictly just an Italian restaurant, pizza and pasta and things like that. It says on the banner up there, European food, and it's got a bunch of other stuff listed. So I'm not sure if it's changed owners or if they just expanded their menu, or maybe they always had that stuff and I just didn't notice. But what I remember is this place had some really, really great Italian style pizza. Now, I didn't get to come here too often because my parents were more Pizza Hut type people, and the one that we used to order from is actually just right over here to the right. But I was able to convince them to come here every once in a while, and I remember the pizza being delicious. Now, I've been to just about every McDonald's in the San Fernando Valley, but we had 2 that we went to regularly. the one on Ventura and White Oak, and then this one here on Sherman Way. Now the one on White Oak and Ventura has been remodeled, but this one on Sherman Way still has that 80s and 90s look. Now sadly, the one thing that has changed is the playground that used to be right there no longer exists, and not even really for a good reason. It's just got some outdoor seating now. But of course, I remember that as the McDonald's playground that I played on many times. Right here used to be a small vintage looking diner called Darby's Coffee Shop. It's one of those places that I thought would always be here because it just kind of always was, but now it's gone. Right here used to be the Chatsworth Van Store. And if you grew up in the San Fernando Valley, the odds are you either remember shopping at this store or driving by it. I know I remember passing by this store my entire life. Now, I'm not sure if this was the first van store in the valley, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the first. I know it was here since at least the late 1960s. Sad to see it gone. So somewhere in this shopping center used to be Safari Surf, a cool little surf and skate shop. But I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't remember which one was the exact building, but I think it was this one right here. It's been a long time since I've been here, but I'm pretty sure this was it. And like I said, this was just a really cool little surf and skate shop. I mostly went to Valley Skate and Surf, but I did come here every once in a while. The owner was a really nice guy. He actually even gave me somewhat of a job. He hired me to pass out flyers for his shop, and in exchange, he gave me a skateboard and a set of wheels. Pretty good deal for just passing out some flyers. Now, I believe Safari Surf was here for almost 30 years before changing locations. Now, this right here, I believe, was their last location. I'm not sure if they had another location between the one on Nordhoff and this one here on Devonshire, but like I said, I believe this was their final location. And I think they were here for just a couple of years, but nonetheless, Safari Surf was a really cool shop, and I'm sad to see it gone. If you grew up in the San Fernando Valley, the odds are you remember that right here used to be the GM plant. It opened in 1947, but after they moved Camaro and Firebird production to Quebec, it closed in 1992. Now right over here underneath this bridge, there's some murals that pay homage to the GM plant. By 1998, the plant had been torn down and a shopping center was built in its place, appropriately titled The Plant. Now inside this shopping center, there's a movie theater. Now I've never been inside this movie theater, but from what I've read, the inside of it's decorated with automotive stuff, obviously once again paying homage to the GM plant that used to be in its place. So even though the GM plant is no longer here, there's definitely still quite a few things around to help keep its memory alive. This is one of the many air raid sirens that you can find around the San Fernando Valley. And if you don't know what an air raid siren is, basically back in the day when the entire country was terrified of nuclear war, these were sirens that were placed all around Los Angeles, and these would supposedly go off and warn you if there was some type of missile attack. Now these sirens had to be tested regularly, so all throughout the 1950s and the early 60s, these sirens would go off every last Friday of the month at 10 a.m. You could hear them all throughout Los Angeles. Now sometime around the early 60s, they realized that half the sirens weren't working anyway, so they just stopped using them altogether. Now, for some reason when I was a kid, I was completely terrified of nuclear war. It didn't help that I had an older brother that would constantly make fun of me about it and do things like point at airplanes high up in the sky and tell me that they were nuclear missiles. So one day when I noticed the air raid sirens around the valley, I made the mistake of asking my dad what they were, and once he told me, it was a whole new fear that I had to deal with. Now they seem to be slowly removing these. There's a lot less of them around than there was back in the 80s, but there's still quite a few of them here in the valley. Now if this is something you're interested in, there's actually a website. Somebody made a map of all the air raid sirens in Los Angeles. Now some of the sirens on the map have already been removed, but this is still a pretty good reference. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure you go do that right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.